Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
Well, President Biden doing his best to further divide the nation Thursday night, pitting former President Trump and his millions of MAGA supporters as a threat to democracy itself. The White House denied Biden's speech was political in nature, but for a speech that was supposed to be about the soul of America, it definitely had a political bent and a very nasty tone. Let's bring in Dick Morris, host of Dick Morris Democracy. He is also the former advisor to Presidents Clinton and Trump, and he's also the author of another New York Times best-selling book. He has many of them. This one is a great one, too, The Return, Trump's Big 2024 Comeback. Dick, what was your reaction to President Biden's big-time anti-MAGA speech on Thursday night? What did you think of it?
I think it was one of the two most important unforced errors by an incumbent president since World War II. The other one in mind is the malaise speech that Jimmy Carter gave in 1979, where he said there's a malaise sweeping America, and it was really him that was causing it. And but this is a huge mistake. This is a historic mistake.
Now, why so, Dick? Why?
I think Biden will fall 7 or 8 points in approval as a result of this speech. Presidents have to be presidential. They have to be above it. They have to be dignified. They have to be ecumenic. They can't be mean-spirited. And he showed the exact opposite of what a president should be. The question in my mind is, he knows all this, and his advisors know this. Why did he give the speech? Why did he incur the negatives he's about to incur? And I think the reason is that the basic democratic strategy that I outline in my book, The Return, is to make Donald Trump the issue, so Joe Biden is not the issue. When you think of the election of 2020, Joe Biden was nowhere to be seen. He was in the basement hiding. The issue was Donald Trump. And now they want the issue to be Donald Trump again, but not Joe Biden. And that way he can get away with the inflation, the gas prices, the horrible record of his presidency without people talking about it. And I think that the first part of this strategy was the speech. Well, the first part was the Mar-a-Lago raid. The second was the speech. The third, I think, is going to be a grand jury indictment of Donald Trump for the crime of not returning his library books, which is essentially what he did with the archives. The archives are essentially a library. His books were overdue. But they'll indict him and they'll try to convict him. And the purpose of this is not to knock him out of the race. They can't do that. Not to deny him the nomination. They probably can't do that. But to foment a primary in the Republican Party. They're hoping that DeSantis and his people say, why do we have to have this baggage in 2024? This guy is toxic in certain places. Let's go past him. Let's go and get somebody else. And somebody else would be a lot easier for the Democrats to beat. But that's their strategy. And the question is, why would Biden take these hits, take the risk of giving so incendiary and unpresidential and intemperate a speech as president? And the answer is because he's essentially falling on his sword to bring the issue to Trump and making this issue all about Donald Trump. Remember, Rita, in the 1990s, you and I did some talking together when I was working for Clinton and you were the media. Everything was about Monica Lewinsky. Nothing about anything else. Nobody ever heard of this guy named Osama bin Laden, who was somewhere in the mountains of Afghanistan doing God knows what. Nobody cared. The only issue was Monica. Now the only issue will be Trump and the archives. And it's a trivial issue. It's literally overdue library books. There's no national security implication.
So let me ask you, Dick, because we know we're going to hear from President Trump. He's going to be doing his rally. We just have about 30 seconds or so left, Dick. What do you think President Trump will say, and what would you advise him to say?
Well, I think he has to hit back at Biden. He can't just let this pass. But if I were him, the key thing I'd focus on is a contrast between his record and Biden's record, which is exactly what they're trying to obscure, what Biden's trying to obscure. I would lay out that gas was $1.80 when he was president. Inflation was under 2%. There was no fentanyl coming over the border. The border was basically closed. I think that kind of a contrast is just what the Democrats are most afraid of. And only Trump can do it, because only he has a record before the Biden record to compare it with.
Yeah, absolutely. And he can say, look, miss me now, which a lot of people are saying. Dick Morris, thank you very much. Always great to have you on, Dick, and congrats on another big bestseller. Thank you.
Thank you.